Welcome to the MBR show, where we scrutinise the latest bikes, critique the newest hardware and discuss the hottest topics in mountain biking. We're going to talk about the influx of motorcycle brands into the e-bike market. We're going to look at the news about orange bikes going into administration, and we've got Jamie down in the workshop who's got the latest Production Privee. But to start with, I want to talk a little bit about the SRAM T-Type transmission.
You've been consumer crusading, haven't you?
I have indeed, yeah. Got quite a exciting kind of update on the video that we put out the other day. I actually bent the rear derailleur some way down the line and had to repair it with a new cage assembly. I needed the two plates that the jockey wheels are sandwiched between, just the two plates. But you couldn't get those separately. You have to buy the whole cage assembly, which includes the clutch and the pulley wheels, both of which are perfectly fine on my mech. And that costs £181 for XX.
That's pretty expensive.
Yeah, and about £120 for GX. Now you can buy a GX and install that in there, XX, but still, that's a lot of money. But SRAM watched our video and have gone back internally, and they came back to us, they messaged us to say that they are going to offer a much cheaper option for repairing bent cages. Basically comes the two cage plates and the pulleys, and it's going to be £28. In Europe, it's €31 and $29 US. And
that's pretty cool, right?
That's amazing.
And you kind of need it too, because those derailleurs are quite long, and like the bike you had it on was a MX wheel bike, so it hangs kind of low and it's definitely a little bit more exposed than the shorter mechs of old. So like that's great that it's not going to be like 180 or 120 pound damage if you clip it on a stump or something like that.
That's brilliant news.
That's excellent.
The other thing I wanted to clarify or rather correct in that video was when I checked the chain, I used the wrong tool for that.
The wrong chain checker.
That's right. So you need a special tool for flat top SRAM chains. I've got one here. This one's a Park CC4. There's a couple of other brands doing them. I think Pedros does one, and I think SRAM does one as well.
But you told me you got pretty much the same, like even though you weren't using the correct chain checker for flat top, basically the wear you got the same degree of wear with both checkers. I
rechecked it with this tool and it was still less than 0.5%, which indicates it's absolutely fine.
How many miles you got on that bike?
So I've done 1200k.
Okay, so, that's still pretty decent.
Yeah, I think the salient point is that you can do that amount of mileage and still be a long way off having to replace your chain, which you'd hope considering the cost of the parts involved.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's cool. T-Type update.
That's really cool.
So Al, motorcycle brands. Now, we've had a lot of newcomers into the e-bike market in the last few years with e-bikes from people such as Ducati, KTM. We even had Valentino Rossi producing his own e-bike, believe it or not. We've got the Yamaha behind us there. So you've been sort of digging a bit deeper into these newcomers to the market and what it means.
So I think I've kind of highlighted 5 key motorcycle brands that are kind of making inroads into the e-mtb market. Number 1 on my list would probably be GasGas. It's part of the KTM group. It's probably best known for trials motorcycles, but they launched 2 bikes this year, the ECC, which is a 160mm enduro bike, and the MXC, which is a 140mm kind of more all-mountain bike, both featuring SRAM powertrain. So they've just come in with the newest system and boom, and the bikes look amazing.
Straight to the front of the queue, isn't it?
And what's really cool about it, they really seem to know their market base. So for the mountain bikers out there, they've got proportional chainstays on the bikes, so you've got balanced weight distribution front and rear. And then for the petrol heads, they've got WP suspension on the top 2 tier bikes with like cone valve technology and stuff. So they're gonna be like, oh my God, that's amazing. They're gonna be all over it. That's all fantastic. My only concern was that the bikes are only available with the 630 watt-hour battery. So if you're not racing, you might be a little bit nervous about not having enough juice. But there's also range extenders for the bike with 250 watts. So that takes you up to what, 880? So like you've almost got like a 900 watts of energy to burn through. So it's pretty amazing. And
one thing I wanted to mention about the GasGas range that I thought was quite intriguing was that the entry-level model to each of those 2 ranges, I think it's about 6.5K, comes with the SRAM motor but it doesn't come with
It
axis
comes with
transmission.
mechanical
It comes with
drivetrain.
mechanical drivetrain, so there's no auto shift on it. So that was, I've not
it's-
heard, I didn't even know that was possible.
Well, that's pretty cool because it means that that means that your price structure of your range isn't predetermined by the drivetrain, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's good value.
Yeah, totally. It's really cool. So number 2 on my hit list is Yamaha.
Yep.
Currently, they supply all the motors for giant e-bikes, but they're also making their own e-bikes. And I mean, this is the moral behind this. This bike, like, it's got a really good motor, it's got a good battery. So it's got a unique frame design. They call it the dual twin. So basically, you've got a double top tube, double down tube. Basically, the battery sits in the middle of the down tube. The shock sits in the middle of the top tube. And the geometry is pretty good, apart from, I'd say, the seat angle is too slack, because it gives you the slack seat angle gives you like a 660 odd top tube, which seems huge, but the bike's actually not that big. It's pretty standard. It's got like a 475 reach. Head angle is pretty normal. What's also really interesting about it, which probably dates it, is it's got 27.5 wheels, front and rear.
Yeah, and plus size tires as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those things, they're really easy to fix.
Yeah.
Like someone could just come in and go, okay, 2.5 tire in the rear, 2.5 tire in the front, 29-inch wheel in the front, let's get that seat angle, jack it up, and then you got a cool bike.
Yeah.
On their website, they actually talk about how they've tuned the flex of the bike. And you don't hear, that's not often discussed, which I think is pretty cool. And that's obviously come from their motor background. And like what I think is really cool with Yamaha is that it's a different model. So lots of brands that produce motors and sell them to other brands. Yamaha produces motors, but it's also going to make its own bikes. And that's in addition to like lawnmowers, boats,
Pianos.
jet skis, everything. You know what I mean? It's like they make so many different parts. It's a huge company. So like the potential for them, like if they nail it, to just become a really big market player is huge. So third on my list is Ducati.
Okay. Yeah.
Classic Italian brand. Everybody knows it. Needs no introduction. Bikes are sort of designed. They're all designed around the Shimano system. They've got 2 levels of bike. They've got the kind of power stage, which is the enduro race style bike. And then they've also got a bike called the MiG-5, which is more of an all-mountain bike. Again, that MiG-5 looks a little bit dated.
Whereas the power stage is a little bit more modern, isn't it?
It's more modern. It's the latest bike too, so that makes a lot of sense.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the power stage, they specifically were targeting the climbing performance?
Hence the name. And like, that's tricky because it's got a Shimano EP801 motor. And traditionally, that's not been the strongest motor for winning power stages, but the Yeti team have kind of turned that around with some help with Shimano. So maybe we're going to see something new from Shimano. Maybe Shimano is going to be the motor,
some software updates
that everybody wants. Yeah. And what's also interesting with Ducati is they see the whole thing as like they want to be your point of contact. So you pick it up from a Ducati dealer. If you have a problem with it, you bring it back to your Ducati dealer. The whole service comes with Moto, kind of comes in there, which kind of goes a little bit different to how it works in cycling. So good luck to them. I hope they can do that, and like it's really cool. So number 4, Husqvarna. So Husqvarna is like their range got a complete refresh in 2024, and what's really kind of interesting is they got the new Cross range. So you got 3 platforms, and rather than defining it by like trail, enduro, all mountain, or whatever, which to be honest, if you're not a mountain biker and you're just going to buy an e-bike, you might not know what the hell any of those terms mean, right? So what they have is basically the hard cross, which is a 180, 170 mil travel bike for demanding terrain, a mountain cross, which is a 150 mil travel bike for rugged terrain, and the light cross, a 130, 120 mil platform for moderate terrain. So basically they're using demanding terrain, rugged terrain, and moderate terrain to define the kind of travel and intended use of the bikes. So the bikes all use Shimano like EP801 motors, and the mountain cross and the light cross, both of this kind of interesting frame design where the motor's been clocked, so it kind of sits between like the kind of two, I don't know, what would you call them, 2 down tubes kind of thing.
Parallels.
It's like
kind of frame tube, aren't they?
And that's really cool. So that allows them to run the battery really low, and they've got like a 720 watt-hour battery, which is really easy to remove. It's really cool. So number 5, last on my list, Honda.
They don't have a bike.
Well, they kind of have. Well, they've got that thing. You wrote the story on it. You wrote
this.
So basically,
you wrote they need to do better. Must try harder.
Basically, so you wrote the story on the concept bike. I mean, is it a rendering? Is it even a real bike?
No, it was they had it at the Japan Motor Show.
It was a real bike.
I don't know whether it was rideable or not, but it was it was physically there.
So what I would say is that looking at that bike, I'd say the geometry looks better than the old downhill bike. Like it looks a bit longer, because the old downhill bike, the RN01 was like super short, super innovative bike. It'd be current today, basically. It had the drivetrain encased in a carbon kind of alloy shell. show us suspension, looked unreal, an amazing project that just never saw the light of day. I actually hope that that concept bike never sees the light of day, because like you highlighted all the problems with it. It's got the seat tube's really short, so there's no like seat post insertion. The kinematic looks weird because it's a single pivot, and the shock,
the swing arm driven by the shock
at a really goofy angle.
Yeah.
Considering how far ahead they were, what was that, 20 years ago? Fingers totally off the pulse.
Yeah, why bother almost? You know, when you know, Yamaha showed a couple of bikes at that show as well, which were, you know, maybe not to my taste in terms of looks, but they were certainly really quite innovative. And you think, well, all of that sort of engineering expertise, the technology, know-how, like you think they could come up with something better than that.
You know, yeah, they will.
Yeah,
they've got to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be happy if they just made the RN01 and
with a motor.
Put the battery in the middle and just get rid of the. I'd like to see them come with. I mean, they had the first gearbox transmission, so if they could get a motor with a gearbox that's low friction, it'd be unreal.
They could even chuck a pinion in there if they couldn't be bothered to do that.
It'd be unreal.
It would be.
What it really is, the Honda thing is like it's a show of intent. And I hope that's what it is, and I hope they don't make that bike, but I hope it's like, hey, look, we're getting into this, and look at us, and then hopefully they'll come with something better.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard of Production Privee, they are a small brand producing mostly steel frames out of Andorra. Now they're now owned by the Forrestal group, so you know you've got the super high-end e-bikes, and then you've got the kind of more traditional analog Production Privees. But the actual technology in the frame is super cutting edge. And Jamie's down there in the workshop with the latest Shan number 5, and he's going to give us a little bit of a talk through.
So what we have here is the Production Privee Shan 5. It's a really interesting bike because it's made from not one material, but two. The front triangle is made from steel, while the rear swing arm is made from carbon fibre. That makes it a really unusual bike because most bikes are made from one material, or occasionally you get bikes blending the two. We've seen titanium bikes with carbon fibre swing arms, and we've seen a lot of carbon fibre bikes with aluminium swing arms, but steel and carbon, pretty rare. So the big question then is, why has Production Privee done this? Well, basically they're searching for the ultimate bike, like every brand, and their idea is to use a steel front triangle for that lovely kind of damped feel on the trail that sort of purrs along. And we've known plenty of bikes that use steel to great effect like this. Then at the rear, they've used carbon fibre so that it can reduce the unsprung weight of the bike. They've chopped off something like 800 grams from the weight of this bike from the previous version to make that kind of suspension go a bit more pitter-patter, make it a little bit softer. That's not the only thing they've done though. Changing the back end of this bike has also increased the flex of it, increased the lateral flex of the bike. They're constantly searching for a better feel to the bike, and that's kind of the way they've gone. They want it to be a little bit softer, a little bit less stiff. If you take a close look at the welding on this bike as well, you'll see something really interesting going on. They are so neat, and that's because this bike has been robot welded, so no hand welding, it's all done by robots, and that means you get these really, really neat welds. It's not just cosmetic either. The benefits to doing that are that it's going to be a lot stronger. Less of the metal has got to be superheated and then cooled down again. You get less twisting in the frame because of that. You get less deformation, and the whole frame, in theory, should be stronger because of that. As you can see, the yellow color scheme is continued with that Olin suspension as well, so you get a TTX shock on the back, and that's generating 140mm travel, and there's an RFX 36 fork on the front as well, generating 150mm travel. Production Privee says that the travel actually increases when you get to the bottom of the stroke though, because of the flex of that back end. So it's saying you get something like 10mm more travel out of the back when you're in full compression. There are some really nice touches to this bike as well. It's got internal cable routing and it doesn't enter through the headset, which is one of my bugbears, I hate that. Instead it enters on the down tube, and it's held in place by these lovely little aluminium kind of grommets or clamps to hold it all tight and stop it rattling. So when you ride this bike, it is whisper quiet. Production Privee also includes its own bar and stem. It comes with a 50mm stem and an 800mm bar. And I really like the way they've got marking so you can line up the bar and stem and get it perfectly set up for you. You can't buy this bike as a complete package. Unfortunately, you can only buy it as a frame only without the shock, or you can buy it as a rolling chassis. The rolling chassis includes the fork, the shock, the bar and the stem, and it includes the dropper post, and it includes the wheels. In fact, it includes everything except the drivetrain and the brakes, which you'll have to source separately. You cannot buy this bike in the UK. You have to buy it through Production Privee's website based in Andorra, and this rolling chassis will cost you €4,700. I've given this bike a couple of rides, maybe 3 rides on this bike so far, and it's really surprising. I was expecting it to be kind of flexy and a bit noodly, kind of like the way a lot of steel bikes have been for me, but it isn't. It's kind of a really nice blend of stiffness and compliance. With only 140mm travel, it's not exactly an enduro bike, and that's reflected in where it feels best. It does really well in those kind of tight, twisty trails that the UK does so well. In fact, it's probably one of the best cornering bikes I've ridden recently. It is a lovely bike to ride in these kind of muddy conditions we've had over this winter. So that's it, that's the Production Privee Shan 5. It's a bike I really like. It's also a bike that other people seem to really like because they rush over to you in the car park or whenever you stop on the trails to have a look at it. Does blending steel and carbon work? Yeah, in this instance, it definitely does. Although whether that's down to the materials or the construction and design of the bike, I'm not sure. Maybe that's a debate for another time.
So thanks, Jamie. So next up, sad news recently is that Orange Bikes has gone into administration.
Yeah, that is sad, and I mean, who knows who it's sad for? It might be actually sad for the people that supply Orange with all the components because they might end up not getting paid. But it is sad that we've got such an iconic brand.
35 years they've been going, and
I mean, how many times have we had, like, the 5 was like Trail Bike of the Year multiple times. Iconic. Yeah. They were like
Patriot.
They were pretty progressive. 224s, 225s, yeah. Like Petey on that black and yellow Bumblebee style bike. I remember him saying once actually that he said that was the only bike that only ever fitted him. That's the bike he raced on. That's the only bike he raced on that fitted him.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, it's the bike industry is in kind of turmoil at the moment. We've got that COVID sort of tsunami of demand. Yeah. Then you've got the sort of the supply coming a little bit too late, the oversupply now, the demand's completely fallen away on all price points really. I mean, everyone is struggling for cash flow. That's
why you're seeing bikes at 40, 50% off, basically, because they're trying to like refinance so they can pay for the next round of bikes that's coming. And it's definitely going to take a while for that to settle down. And there's going to be casualties. Yeah, I mean, on our sister site, Bike Perfect, Guy Kestevan had a little look into some of the sort of details behind it. And it looks like, you know, Orange owe quite a lot of money to some creditors. You've got sort of, bank loans, potentially suppliers. And it's just, you know, all of that kind of money has been called time, and it's just doesn't seem to be the cash flow there to pay. But hopefully they can restructure their debt and keep going, because they make some cool bikes. They do, yeah. I mean, we were talking about some of the, you know, the bikes recently on the show, the Phase Evo and stuff, and you know, every time we get an Orange in, we're always not surprised, but it brings home how good. I'm always surprised when I ride them, because they have a feel. They have a certain feel to them. Like, I don't know if it's that flat pressed aluminium, seam welded kind of single pivot. They just have a feel to them that I like. Yeah, you know? It's like so it'd be a real shame if that's the end of it. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So Danny, I just want to circle back to the Canyon Strive On test that you did. Now we had a problem. I remember we had a problem because I rode that bike for the video, like on the battery cutting out all the time, the power cutting out. Canyon sent you a new replacement latch for the battery. Is that correct? That's right. Yep. Has that worked? Yeah. So far, I think, I mean, it hasn't cut out since fitting it. It's weird though. I put the two together. I could not see any difference between them. But I think the little metal kind of hook has maybe been strengthened so that it doesn't sort of gradually bend outwards and over time. Just gives a tiny bit of movement there. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty simple to fit. Just I think it's. There's a bolt on to the end of the battery, and then you remove the old one and put the new one on. There's like a little cover. So you unbolt the cover, then you unbolt the latch mechanism. So I think it's like 2 bolts and 2 bolts, or 4 bolts total. Pretty quick, pretty easy to do. Seems to have fixed it. So. And I think the key thing for anyone that has that, I mean, that's not unique to Canyon. We should stress that. It's part of the Bosch system. And anyone that has that battery. That battery with that system with the latch on it, is that the battery has to be located correctly before don't use the latch to get the battery to locate, you've got to have it in place. And there shouldn't be much force on that when you close it.
Absolutely. And it's actually like I was kind of trying to find a way of getting that to engage the kind of connector.
Because the connector's up at the head tube, yeah.
That's right. And so I think the best way of doing it, because there's kind of play up here at the head tube, is to actually twist the battery.
Okay.
As you put the bike upside down,
Yeah.
you slide drop
Yeah.
the battery in, and then you twist it, and then it finds its way into the port. Less fiddly now. I've found the trick for it. Before I was like, oh, I'll be there for like 5 minutes. Is it in? Is it in? You know, but
you shouldn't need a trick. So it's good that they've got a more robust system.
You still need the trick though.
Okay.
You still need the trick.
Okay.
And the other thing with the Bosch system, I think we talked about it in that video, is that the cold temperatures. It doesn't charge in cold temperatures.
Yeah.
And I had that the other day on the white E-Lite as well, which has got the enclosed, the battery's not removable. I had that outside, charging from an outside plug socket, and it's charging through the day, but as the temperature dropped towards the end of the day, it just stopped charging. And so I had to bring the whole bike inside. I had to wait like 2 or 3 hours for the bike to warm up.
Do you think we need like almost like tire heaters, but like to go around the down tube, and you kind of when you plug your bike in the next socket, you plug your little down tube warmer or whatever, just to keep the. I don't know if is it the temperature on the charger or is it the battery?
Battery temperature drops too low. Yeah.
It is particularly cold at the moment, though, isn't it?
It is very cold. So yeah, if you've got a garage like with no insulation and stuff like that, you might have issues at the moment. But so
the key thing for that, Danny, is take the battery out,
little duvet,
or bring it indoors. Bring it indoors and charge it, and then be careful when you're putting it back in with that latch.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So thanks for watching, and we'd love to know what you think of moto e-bikes and whether you'd consider buying one in the future. Let us know in the comments below.